I'm Christy. Today I want to talk to you about the adventures and challenges of special needs and wisdom teeth. So you know how I regularly say that special needs simply complicates things in life? Well, we had another great example this past week. About a month ago, I took AJ to the dentist for a cleaning. Now because of COVID, it had been a bit longer than between visits than we usually go, but no big deal. No cavities, overall, a good report. Glad to hear that. Oh yeah, he needs to have his wisdom teeth taken out. Now, they gave me a referral to an oral surgeon and a copy of his most recent x-rays. Yep, the bottom wisdom teeth were horizontal. Definitely, I think the top ones are broken through. But yeah, definitely need to come out. Fortunately, the referral was to the oral surgeon who took out my wisdom teeth before the boys were born. And it was a relatively positive experience for me. I definitely recommend this guy. So I was happy to see that. What I was significantly less happy about was the prospect of going through the healing process with AJ after the wisdom teeth came out. You see, when AJ got his braces, they removed 3 permanent teeth to make room in his mouth. He wouldn't chew anything for an entire week or more. I literally was a day away from calling the dentist's office and asking if they would tell AJ themselves that it was time for him to eat again. And while I no longer worry about him losing too much weight, the fear is always nagging in the back of my mind. He was failure to thrive for several years when he was a little kid. And during those years, there was no such thing as a bad calorie for him. So I'm always hyper aware when he stops eating or gets sick. And there we were. AJ talking about being excited to get his wisdom teeth out nearly every day. Looking at our calendar, I decided that spring break would be a good time to do it since he had some downtime and we weren't planning to go anywhere this year. Eventually, I called the oral surgeon's office and was able to get an appointment for that Monday. First official day of spring break. Phew, pulled that one off. Now, AJ immediately said that he would skip dinner that night he got his wisdom taken out. I said, no, you need to eat something that night. Now, I did admit that he'd need to eat soft foods for a few days, but the doctor's office had said he could eat soft pasta and other things right away. He wasn't so convinced. So last Monday, he and I were at the oral surgeon's office for our 8:15 appointment. COVID complicated things. What does it not complicate? So we sat in the car for about an hour while they processed our paperwork and prepared the room. They brought us straight into a room, and after a brief explanation from the doctor and asking our questions and getting them answered and asking to keep the teeth, they started hooking him up to the monitors. Now, we opted to have him totally knocked out because it removes almost all the risk of trauma from the procedure. He stressed a bit about the IV, but we talked him into that without too much trouble. I stayed with them until just before they started the IV. I asked, and he said that I could leave, and I wasn't sure how much longer I wanted to stay anyway. I headed back out to the car. I was told it would take about a half hour to complete the procedure. And right on time, they wheeled him out to the car again. I brought him home and changed the gauze in his mouth regularly for the next 2 or 3 hours. About the time everything stopped and we were done with the gauze, he asked if he could eat something. Now, since it had been about 18 hours since he'd had anything to eat, I was really encouraged that he was hungry enough to ask for food. But he was still numbed up pretty good. Since he was asking for pudding and yogurt, I decided it was fairly safe, even though he was still numb. We went downstairs and got him food. He actually did pretty well, although because his whole jaw was still numb, he couldn't tell when he was missing his mouth and dribbling. So we laughed our way through all of that as I kept wiping his mouth. I love drooling, he said as he was laughing. Now, our concerns ended up being well-founded. This week's food has included exactly pudding, yogurt, applesauce, and chocolate milk, which was really Carnation Instant Breakfast to get some minimal level of protein and nutrition into him. That's literally all he's eaten since removing his wisdom teeth. Now, the only exception was Sunday, a week later. He had macaroni and cheese at a restaurant when we went for lunch, but it was back to yogurt and pudding for dinner. Now, I'm hoping that I was hoping we could start getting him to eat again this last Monday when this post went live. Now, aside from the eating, though, he's done amazingly well. Not a single pain pill. Says his mouth doesn't hurt. Now, I can't imagine how that's really true, but we know he has a crazy high pain tolerance. And I think among his processing issues, pain is just one of the things that doesn't process for him. Now, obviously, we weren't going to force him to take any pain meds, so he hasn't. We've had him on hand, but there they've sat. And we even threw a twist at him by having him go with my husband on Wednesday to get his first COVID vaccine when my husband got his second dose. Again, he did it all like a champ. Now, overall, I'm happy with how this turned out. Yes, it was challenging at times. Yes, we have some great stories to tell about it. And yes, I hope he never has to have any more work done on his mouth that takes any kind of recovery period beyond waiting for the numbness to wear off. So how does all of this apply to you? Well, hopefully, if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, I hope that it's nearly as easy and smooth sailing as this week has been for us. That said, here are a few things that I did to prepare. First of all, know your loved one. Now, obviously, you do, but plan accordingly. Because of the previous teeth pulling experience, I expected him not to eat for a week. I hoped for a different response, but I wasn't overly surprised when that's what happened. Second, plan realistically for the recovery period. Aside from the COVID vaccine, we had no plans for AJ this week. He was able to lay low, heal in a non-pressured environment. He definitely spent more time laying on his bed and watching videos and less time playing on his desktop this week. But I'm glad that we were able to give him that time to do what he felt was best. Third, also in that planning, I had plenty of pudding and yogurt on hand. And late in the week, I went and restocked everything so that he could continue on his path of soft foods for a number of more days, should we be unable to get him to eat anything else. And finally, be willing to make extra visits for follow-up if necessary. I wrote on Monday that I'm toying with calling the doctor's office to ask for a follow-up check just to make sure everything's healing well and to get him to start eating again, or to have them tell him to start eating again. And I came very, very close to making that phone call. But since we decided to wait until Tuesday, and Tuesday at work, for his first day back to work, he ate a bagel for lunch. So we decided to let it go, and he's eaten a little bit. He's still doing a lot of the pudding and yogurt and applesauce, but he is eating a little bit else. So we had wondered about this beforehand. I had forgotten to ask specifically what the longest time period was to know when he should start eating again. Now, as this adventure winds to a close, I am so grateful for his flexibility and adaptability. I'm incredibly grateful that he didn't have any dry sockets. And I'm grateful that it's almost behind us now. Which leads me to my question for this week. Have you had any similar adventures with your loved one? Care to share about it? I'd love to hear about it. You can leave me a comment below, or you can leave me a comment over on the blog. That's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in April of 2021. I'm grateful for a smooth recovery so that I can continue to say that life is good and there is never a dull moment.